could not believe how many said, oh, well, I smoke a joint every night to go to sleep. And I'm like, what? Like, I would never think that you ever, you seem conservative, or you never talk about it, or you're not what I perceive. And they're like, oh, Lisa, you have no idea.
That's Lisa Cini, internationally recognized designer of senior living centers, founder and president of Mosaic Design Studio, and author of Boom, the Baby Boomer's Guide to Leveraging Technology so that you can preserve your independent lifestyle and thrive.
I'm just delighted to be here today.
Well, to me, in one sense, the findings of that study really surprised me, but I guess in another, it really shouldn't surprise anybody. What's been your reaction, and what have you heard?
Well, I have to tell you that I was surprised by the survey. We did have over 15,000 respondents, and we weeded out several that were either not of age, or to make sure there weren't any bots or people that didn't live in the U.S. So the sample size of 11,000 is enormous. And one of the things that surprised me in the study was at this point when I did it, so much of cannabis use was still illegal in the United States, even for medicinal use. So I thought I would have a lot of people saying, no, I don't use it, or whatnot. And then I thought that the results would show that the majority of the people that did say they used marijuana versus CBD, that kind of thing, would come from states that were legal, like California or Colorado or Maine, those types of things. But the results were actually not that. They were from every state. And the boomers just really didn't care whether somebody, found out if they were using, cannabis for their health reasons or for recreational use. And that was pretty shocking to me.
I can hear now people saying, oh yeah, those baby boomers are all potheads.
I think what we perceive a pothead to be is someone that's kind of maybe partakes in marijuana every day. They might be kind of cool and chill or lackadaisical, or all the negative connotations of what someone thinks a pothead is. And I found it to be exact opposite, that the majority of the results showed that people use it for aches and pains and sleep. So that was shocking to me.
You were telling me how the respondents are quite open. There's nothing to hide.
It was. Now, one, I did a Facebook survey that I used a separate group that was able to do the survey results. It had nothing tied to Facebook, and I didn't capture anybody's email addresses or names. So that helped to keep anonymity. We did have a couple paranoid people that thought that we were going to track everybody and the government was going to hunt them down, but that was not the case. But the majority of people were very, very open about it, and quite frankly, I thought that they wanted to have the dialogue so that we could stop pretending that people aren't using this in the beneficial ways they are.
Would I be safe to assume that you are way ahead of the curve on the topic of baby boomers, because not a whole lot of people are writing about that?
I think I am ahead of the curve, and part of it is because I designed for senior living, and everybody wants to get the baby boomers into their senior living. And I've heard from my friends that use daily, they're like, we're not going. When someone's going to take away my pot and make me sign in and out and not allow me to have my pet, I'm not going into that kind of environment. This is not the silent generation or World War II generation that marches in step and does what everybody says they should do.
Tell us about yourself and then what steered you here today.
Sure. Well, I'm a senior living interior designer, and I've worked in the field for about 25 years. Probably about 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago, I wrote my first book, which was about the future is here, senior living reimagined, like how technology was going to just change everything we did. I mean, back when I wrote the book, people were still handwriting their medical records and orders, and there was no Wi-Fi in most of the homes, or most people didn't even use it. No one knew what a podcast was, those types of things. So no one was wearing kind of a health watch. So I talked a lot about that, and I wanted to introduce that to my clients, which were the owners and operators. Then after that, I had an opportunity to move my grandmother, who was 92 with Alzheimer's, and my parents in their late 70s in with my teenage kids and my husband and I. And we did this multi-generational experiment, basically, kind of like a commune a little bit. And so many people asked me about it because I talked about the social issues and design tricks, and then how you handle medications and stress levels and everything like that. And I ended up writing a book about that, and that was Hive, the Simple Guide to Multi-Generational Living. And what I found was the majority of people that were talking to me either about their parents or about themselves and how they wanted to transition through their new season in living were boomers. This was huge. And I didn't see out there that there was number one, housing options. Two, did everybody want to afford them? 90% don't want to go into senior living. And then what do you do about pets and wanting to still travel and cannabis and all those things? And so that's when I wrote Boom. And I felt like, since I grew up personally smoking pot in high school, although I'm not a boomer, I'm a Gen Xer, my parents were very negative about it. When I saw my mother living with me and she was on drugs for, her back injuries and had surgeries and that, and she said, you know what, I've changed my mind 100% on this. I'd much rather a doctor prescribe me a joint than an opioid. And I thought, wow, that's something there. My mom, the Baptist, is saying she's okay with marijuana. And so I decided to do the survey and break the silence and really figure out what the truth is. I didn't have an underlying idea, and that's of how it was going to come out. And that's why I was really shocked when I got the results.
Tell us a little bit about your study. I know you mentioned a little bit how you use Facebook, and I have to ask you, because people might ask me, why should we believe it?
Yeah. Why should you believe it? Well, first, all 50 states were representative, every age group. We had a third party authenticate it. And again, they threw out over 4,000 survey results they felt were either maybe a bot or illegitimate, or too old or too young. So in a sample size that is legitimate, from what I've been told, is 1,500. So to have over 11,000 legitimate responses from over 50 states in the boomer age group, I think really kind of speaks to it. It's really
that really caught my attention. That number of samples is really extraordinary.
Yeah, and we're getting ready to do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting ready to release it again and see what we're going to ask the same exact questions, except for we're going to add one, and that is whether you're male or female. Because after I got it back, I'm like, wow, I would really like to know if the majority of the people were male or female, or how they answered.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wonder what the study says about us. 83% using some form of cannabis is a lot, but do you think there remains some denial?
I'll tell you, a lot of my friends are boomers. A lot of my friends. And when I went to talk to them about it and say that I was going to do the survey, I could not believe how many said, oh, well, I smoke a joint every night to go to sleep. And I'm like, what? Like, I would never think that you ever, you seem conservative, or you never talk about it, or you're not what I perceive. And they're like, oh, Lisa, you have no idea. And so the more it was like it was very underground, and it was just not needed to talk about, I think. Don't ask, don't tell policy at that point.
What got you interested in this? I mean, with all the decriminalization of marijuana, people I know, they still don't seem to casually discuss their pot use together.
There's still stigma. I mean, I'm just now openly saying, I had told my children, but now I'm openly saying, hey, in high school, I smoked pot. I didn't drink. I was a pot smoker. I'm kind of like very intense, and it took the edge off of me, and I enjoyed it. What I think part of it is that when Canada made it completely legal for recreational and medicinal, that changed the game. And I've been to dispensaries now in Canada and in Italy and in Israel. When you're seeing Canada, Israel, and Italy, look at CBD as a vital part of health or similar to an alcohol. I think it takes off the stigma. At least for me in high school, I was looked at like I was a druggie or something like that, even though I was student council president. So I never talked about it with anybody. You were able to drink, but gosh, if you smoked a joint, that was something, not so great. I also think that vaping coming about has very much changed the delivery system to be able to do it in a gummy or to vape or to do it in a brownie. The different strands and to be able to know what you're getting from a pharmacy, that has helped out quite a bit too, to lessen the fear from people that want to try it. And then let's be honest, not everybody understands that a lot of the cannabis products are CBD related and have very little THC in them, so they don't get you high. They just take away your aches and your pain.
Anything else about Boom, the Baby Boomer's Guide to Leveraging Technology, that you want to talk about?
Sure. I mean, it's a bullet stopper. It's about 400 pages, but it is a larger font. But I made it very easy to read and go through. And we have everything in here from gamification to one of the top veterinarians in the entire country, how to take care of your pets and deal with them, to how to listen to a podcast, to marijuana, to the best foods, to the best, wellness devices that you can use, and then how to really figure out how you want to live. So it's got all kinds of tips and tricks in there. It's just a really nice guide to help you maneuver through your next season of life.
Well, interestingly enough, what you're talking about and what the book seems to represent is pretty much exactly what bloomerboomer.com is and how it was first established. It's a lifestyle publication, and I think you talk in general terms about lifestyle. And I found it interesting because you have a day job that ties into your book. Talk a little bit more about what you do in the other part of your world.
Yeah, so my day job is I run a very large design firm that we design these incredibly beautiful resort-style senior living homes. So the ones that you go in that have 3 different restaurants, and you can get all the services that you need, from independent living all the way through memory care to age in place. So we do that on a daily basis. And then I also have a company called Best Living Tech, and that is an online company where I've pretty much taken all the tech that I found out there to help you age in place and curate it all together in one spot, so you can find your bidet toilet seat, or you can find your gadget to help you sleep better or wake up, or something if your mom's having trouble seeing the phone, larger buttons on it, all those types of little things.
Great. And you mentioned this, or you alluded to this, and you talk about how to mainstream marijuana use into a multi-generational home. Now that is really an interesting challenge, and it sounds like you had personal experience. So tell us again a little bit more about that.
It is. I think, my brother, when my parents moved in with me, my brother was diagnosed with cancer, and he was, his partner was not a real fan of marijuana. And it was one of the things that really helped him to be able to eat and go through the chemo and that. And I remember, coming home, and my mom had this huge marijuana plant up on the balcony, and I immediately freaked out and said, "You can't have this here." And she's like, "Well, your brother doesn't want to have it at his house because he doesn't want to cause any issues, and he's going through the treatments and blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I know, but if somebody sees this here and I could get in trouble. And what I realized then was that you have to have a conversation about these things. I had no issue with him having it. I probably didn't even have an issue with putting it in the basement. For my parents, it was completely a medicinal thing. For my brother, for me, I was like, oh gosh, what if a neighbor sees it and thinks I'm growing a bunch of stuff and calls the cops on me?
Yeah.
You know, you have to, and I'm like, oh no, this is all I need, you know? And so you have to have the conversation. You also, it's no different than alcohol. We had, teenagers in the house. They're not allowed to drink. I'm allowed to drink. My parents are allowed to. But when we go to Italy and we sit down and they give us a glass of champagne and the kids are teenagers, or a glass of wine, I would allow them to have a glass of wine. You have to deal with what is going on in your state, what's legal and allowable, what's smart, whether it's CBD or not. I've used CBD with my children, with the non-THC. My mother now uses it quite a bit. But for me personally, I wouldn't allow them to have something that got them high. I'm just not going to do that at this point. So it's not that they might not have experimented with it just like I did in high school. But I think you have to have the conversation, and you have to figure out where the rules are and who's comfortable with what. And again, whether it is vaping, gummies, actual joint and the smoke involved in that, or CBD, which could be a tincture, it could be drops, it could be a lotion, or many other ways to deliver it.
Where do you see it all going from here?
We're now being allowed to decide where we want to live and how we want to live. Because of crowdsourcing and technology, you can now stay in an Airbnb. You don't have to have an address. You can have your internet and still get your email delivered. You can pay all your bills online. You can rent out your house and trade houses and house swap with people. You can have micro work on TaskRabbit versus going through agencies. There's so much flexibility and freedom today compared to what there was 10 years ago, that as we age, we're going to be able to do it exactly how we want to do it, versus being forced to by some government official or medical industry that says you can't get services unless you're in XYZ facility.
Yeah, and
I'm pretty.
Yeah, and before I forget, because I just remembered that your book also suggests the importance of adopting technology. Isn't that correct? That's kind of a point that you want to also make, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. So, there's a couple different things. One, you need to stay connected. And my mom's 80 or 81, and she's on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Now, my kids and the grandkids are not really crazy about her being on Snapchat, I have to be honest. But she's got her iPad, and what that does is the more you stay connected to youth, the more vibrant you are and more relevant you are, and the more wisdom share you can have. So part of that is being connected through those portals, but you can also improve your quality of life. You can gamify your health benefits, and we know that what you measure, you improve. So, do you wear any kind of health device?
I'm very familiar with it. I've worn the belts to measure my heartbeat and things like that, but not on a daily basis.
So I think, your phone can do your steps.
Yes,
What I think you have to recognize is, as our bodies and our immune systems are not so great, when you're using these devices, they can do predictive analytics with AI and kind of tell you 5 days. I have a couple different devices. I can do an EKG out of my pocket, and it was $99.
Amazing.
And it tells me if I'm going to have a heart attack or stroke about 5 days before it happens. That's a pretty cool thing.
Well, listen, Lisa, as we wrap up here, and you've given us so much good information, I always like to ask my guests, can you share any takeaway with today's audience that might help them from now on moving forward, other than running out and getting your book?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think one is just to keep your mind open with the possibilities. I didn't think that I was going to have a phone that acted as a computer 5 years ago. I didn't think any of that kind of thing. I didn't understand how much we were going to be connected. But don't be overwhelmed by technology or by what's coming down the pike. Pick your lane. If you like to read books, still read books. If you like to, watch movies, watch movies. You don't have to do everything. Choose what works for you and then kind of get into it and learn into it. I think one of the things that boomers, I wish they would get into a little bit more is podcasts. I think they're fantastic, and it's an incredible way to learn and discover new things. And I don't hear people doing that as much. So I'd really encourage any kind of thing like that.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on the podcast.
It is, and there's so much incredible information. It's like having a million radio stations, in your pocket whenever you want to listen to exactly who you want to listen to.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. Lisa, this has been great. I sure appreciate you coming here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure of mine.
Well, we have been talking to Lisa Cini, an author of Boom, the Baby Boomer's Guide to Leveraging Technology so that you can preserve your independent lifestyle and thrive. You can buy the book right here at Bloomer Boomer. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time.